The research station Kepler 442 hung in the void like a metal flower, its 6 arms extending into the darkness around the orange dwarf star. Commander Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the observation deck window, watching the alien children play in the recreational area below. Their crystalline forms caught the artificial light, sending rainbow patterns across the walls. Beautiful, aren't they? Dr. Marcus Webb joined her at the window, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. The xenobiologist had spent 3 years studying the Zephyrian refugees, and his eyes still held wonder when he looked at them. Sarah nodded, but her expression remained troubled. Any word from the council about permanent settlement? Marcus shook his head. The bureaucrats are still arguing about resource allocation. Meanwhile, we have 47 Zephyrian younglings who need stability, not political games. The Zephyrians had arrived 6 months ago, their world destroyed by the expanding hegemony of Kethvar. The reptilian Kethvar consumed everything in their path, turning entire star systems into mining operations. The Zephyrians were one of the few species to escape before complete planetary consumption. Sarah watched as a young Zephyrian named Lyric helped an even smaller child climb onto a play structure. The species aged differently than humans, but Lyric appeared to be equivalent to a human teenager. Her crystalline skin shifted through pale blues and greens, indicating contentment according to Dr. Webb's research. Commander Chen to the bridge. The voice crackled through her communicator. Sarah sighed. On my way. She turned to Marcus. Keep monitoring their stress levels. I don't like how some of the adults have been acting lately. The bridge buzzed with activity as Sarah arrived. Lieutenant Torres looked up from his station, his face grim. Ma'am, we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Harrison. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Admiral Patricia Harrison. Her silver hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her eyes held the weight of difficult decisions. Commander Chen, I'm afraid I have troubling news. Intelligence reports indicate a Kethvar scouting fleet has been detected 3 systems away. They appear to be following the Zephyrian refugee trail. Sarah's blood ran cold. Estimated time of arrival? 72 hours, possibly less. Commander, I'm ordering you to prepare for immediate evacuation. Priority goes to essential personnel and research data. What about the Zephyrians? Admiral Harrison's pause lasted too long. The Council is still debating their status. They're not technically Federation citizens. They're children, Sarah said, her voice hardening. 47 juveniles and their guardians. They have nowhere else to go. I understand your position, Commander, but my hands are tied. The evacuation fleet can only accommodate Federation personnel and high-priority assets. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in heavy silence. Sarah stared at the blank screen, her mind racing. 72 hours to evacuate a research station designed to house 300 people. The math was simple and brutal. Lieutenant Torres, send a message to all department heads. Emergency meeting in conference room A, 15 minutes. As the bridge crew dispersed, Sarah remained standing, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, death was coming for the children playing in the recreation area below. The conference room filled quickly. Department heads filed in with grim expressions, having already heard rumors through the ship's communication network. Dr. Webb took his usual seat near the head of the table, while Chief Engineer Patel checked his tablet constantly, no doubt running evacuation calculations. I'll be direct, Sarah began. We have 72 hours before a Kethvar scouting fleet arrives. Admiral Harrison has ordered evacuation of all Federation personnel. The Zephyrians are not included in the evacuation order. The room erupted in protests. That's unconscionable, Dr. Webb slammed his hand on the table. These beings trusted us. We gave them sanctuary. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Reyes leaned forward. The Zephyrian physiology requires specific atmospheric conditions. They can't survive on most Federation vessels without extensive life support modifications. Security Chief Rodriguez spoke quietly. Commander, what are our defensive capabilities against a Kethvar fleet? Sarah had been dreading this question. Minimal. Kepler 442 was designed as a research station, not a military installation. We have basic shields and point defense systems. Against a Kethvar scouting fleet, we'd last perhaps 20 minutes. Chief Patel looked up from his calculations. I've run the numbers. We can modify life support on 2 evacuation vessels to accommodate roughly half the Zephyrians. But it would require stripping critical systems and reducing human capacity by 60%. So we can save some of them, Dr. Webb said hopefully. Sarah shook her head. Zephyrians don't separate their young from family groups. It's psychologically devastating for their species. We save them all, or we condemn them all. The room fell silent as the weight of the decision settled on everyone present. There is another option, Sarah said slowly. We stay. All of us. We make our stand here and, by time for a proper evacuation fleet to arrive. Security Chief Rodriguez leaned back in his chair. Commander, that's suicide. The Kethvar don't take prisoners, especially not humans. They consider us a contamination to be cleansed. Maybe, Sarah acknowledged. But, it's the only way to save every Zephyrian life on this station. Dr. Webb studied her face intently. You've already made your decision, haven't you? Sarah looked around the table at each face. These people had served with her for 2 years. They trusted her leadership, and now she was asking them to die for principles that their own government had abandoned. No, she said firmly. This isn't my decision alone. Every person on this station gets to choose. But, I want you to understand what we're facing. She activated the wall display, showing detailed intelligence reports about the Kethvar. The hegemony of Kethvar has consumed 17 star systems in the past decade. They strip mine planets down to the core, enslaving or eliminating all indigenous life. Their technology is superior to ours in most areas, especially weapons and shields. The display shifted to show battle recordings from previous encounters. The footage was brutal. Kethvar vessels tore through Federation defenses with ruthless efficiency. However, Sarah continued, they have weaknesses. Kethvar doctrine relies on overwhelming force and intimidation. They don't expect significant resistance from research stations or civilian installations. Their scouting fleets are typically small, designed for reconnaissance rather than prolonged battle. Chief Engineer Patel frowned at his tablet. What exactly are you proposing, Commander? Sarah took a deep breath. We modify the station's defenses. Patel, can you overload the fusion reactors to create a massive energy discharge? Something that could disable or destroy ships at close range? Patel's eyes widened. Theoretically, yes. But, it would be a one-shot weapon. And, the energy release would likely destroy the station. A kamikaze run, Rodriguez muttered. Take them with us. Not necessarily, Sarah said. If we time it right, we could disable their fleet and survive the backlash in the reinforced sections of the station. It's risky, but possible. Dr. Reyes raised her hand. Commander, what about the Zephyrians? Their physiology couldn't handle the radiation exposure from a fusion overload. Sarah had anticipated this question. The lower levels of the station have natural shielding from the asteroid we're anchored to. We'd move all Zephyrians there, along with essential personnel to maintain life support. She looked around the table again. This plan has a low probability of success. I estimate 30% chance of survival for station personnel, maybe 50% for those in the shielded areas. But, it's the only scenario where we save the Zephyrian refugees. The silence stretched for several minutes. Finally, Dr. Webb spoke. Commander, I've spent my career studying alien life forms. The Zephyrians aren't just another species. Their children form psychic bonds with their guardians that last centuries. Separating families causes permanent psychological damage. If we abandon them, we're not just causing their deaths. We're destroying their entire social structure. Security Chief Rodriguez stood up slowly. My daughter is 8 years old. She's back on Earth, safe in school, worried about math tests and making friends. When I look at these Zephyrian children, I see her face. He met Sarah's eyes. If someone threatened my child, I'd expect good people to stand up and fight, even against impossible odds. One by one, the other department heads voiced their agreement. Not because the plan was sound, but because it was right. Sarah felt a mixture of pride and terror. Very well. We'll put it to a station-wide vote. Every person gets to choose. Those who want to evacuate with the Federation fleet can do so. No judgment, no consequences. This is a volunteer mission. As the meeting dispersed, Dr. Webb lingered behind. Sarah, he said quietly, there's something else you should know about the Zephyrians. Their children aren't just psychically bonded to their guardians. They're bonded to anyone who shows them consistent kindness and protection. Sarah frowned. What are you saying? Lyric and several others have formed bonds with human station personnel. You, me, some of the engineers who've been teaching them about human technology. In their minds, we're already family. The weight of this revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. So if we abandon them, we're not just strangers failing to help. We're family abandoning them to death. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the full weight of command settling on her shoulders. Outside the conference room, she could hear the faint sounds of children playing, both human and Zephyrian voices mixing in innocent laughter. The vote took place 6 hours later. Sarah stood in the main assembly area, watching as station personnel cast their ballots electronically. The Zephyrians watched from the upper gallery, their crystalline skin shifting through worried purples and grays. When the final tally appeared on the main screen, Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. Out of 127 human station personnel, 119 voted to stay and fight. Only 8 chose evacuation. Dr. Webb approached the podium. Commander, I'd like permission to inform the Zephyrians of our decision. Sarah nodded, and Webb activated the translation matrix. His words appeared as light patterns on special displays throughout the station, while audio translators converted his speech into the musical tones of Zephyrian language. To our Zephyrian friends, Webb began, we have received news that enemies approach this station. Our government has ordered us to leave, but they did not order you to be saved. We have voted to stay with you, to stand between you and those who would do you harm. The reaction was immediate. Adult Zephyrians in the gallery began shifting through deep blues and violets, colors that Webb had learned indicated profound emotional response. Several young Zephyrians pressed against the gallery windows, their skin cycling rapidly through multiple colors. Lyric stepped forward from the group. When she spoke, her voice carried through the translation matrix as a clear, bell-like tone. Why do you stay? We are not your people. Our worlds are destroyed. We have nothing to offer in return. Sarah moved to the podium. Because it's right. Because when darkness comes for the innocent, good people stand in its way. Because you are our friends, and friends protect each other. The assembly hall fell silent. Then, slowly, the Zephyrian children began to sing. It started with just a few voices, but soon the entire refugee population joined in. The translation matrix couldn't convey the full meaning, but Webb whispered the general translation to Sarah. It's a song of bonding, he said, his voice thick with emotion. They're formally adopting every human on this station into their family structure. In their culture, this is the most sacred commitment possible. Sarah felt tears threatening to fall. Around the assembly hall, hardened engineers and security personnel were openly weeping as the alien song washed over them. When the music ended, an old Zephyrian named Elder Threneth approached the podium. His crystal form was shot through with veins of deep gold, indicating his advanced age and wisdom within their society. Humans of this station, he said, his words carrying the weight of ceremony, you have chosen to share our fate when you could have chosen safety. This is the mark of true family. Our children will remember this choice for all their long lives. If we survive this darkness, the story of your courage will be sung for 1,000 generations. As the assembly dispersed, Sarah found herself standing alone with the weight of command pressing down on her. 119 human lives now depended on her leadership, along with 47 Zephyrian refugees. In 66 hours, death would arrive in the form of a Kethvar scouting fleet. She looked up at the gallery where Lyric still stood, her crystalline skin now a steady, warm gold. The young Zephyrian raised her hand in what she'd learned was a human gesture of greeting. Sarah waved back, silently promising that she would find a way to protect them all. The next 66 hours would determine whether courage and determination could overcome superior firepower and technology. But, as Sarah looked around at the faces of her crew, both human and alien, she felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. The battle for Kepler 442 was about to begin. Chief Engineer Patel's hands flew across the holographic interface, streams of data cascading around him like digital rain. The main engineering bay hummed with unprecedented activity as teams of technicians worked around the clock to transform a peaceful research station into a weapon of war. Status report, Commander Chen called out as she entered the engineering section. Patel looked up, his dark eyes rimmed with exhaustion. We've managed to link all 6 fusion reactors into a single discharge network. The theoretical energy output would be equivalent to a small star going nova, but contained within a focused beam array. Sarah studied the schematic floating above his workstation. The modifications were elegant in their simplicity and terrifying in their implications. How long to complete the modifications? 36 hours, assuming we don't encounter any major system failures. But, Commander, Patel hesitated, there's something you need to understand. This weapon will only fire once. The energy discharge will fuse most of our primary systems. If we miss, or if it doesn't completely disable their fleet, we'll be defenseless. Then, we won't miss, Sarah said with more confidence than she felt. Across the station, similar scenes of desperate preparation were unfolding. In the medical bay, Dr. Reyes worked with a team of Zephyrian healers to establish emergency treatment protocols. The alien physiology presented unique challenges, especially regarding radiation exposure. Their crystalline structure actually provides natural shielding, Dr. Reyes explained to her human staff. But, prolonged exposure to fusion radiation could cause their skin to become brittle and crack. We've synthesized a protective coating that should help, but it's untested. Meanwhile, Security Chief Rodriguez had transformed the station's recreational areas into tactical planning centers. He worked closely with Elder Threneth and several adult Zephyrians who had military experience from their world's final days. The Kethvar prefers psychological warfare, Elder Threneth explained, his crystalline form shifting to deep purple as he recalled painful memories. They broadcast images of their previous conquests before attacking. They want their enemies to surrender in despair. Rodriguez nodded grimly. We'll need to shield the children from those transmissions. Can your people handle that? Our young are stronger than you might think, Threneth replied. They have lived through the destruction of their world. They understand what evil looks like. Dr. Webb spent his time in the refugee quarters, working with the Zephyrian children to prepare them for what was coming. The younglings gathered around him in the common area, their skin cycling through nervous yellows and oranges. Lyric translated for the smaller children as Webb spoke. We need you to be very brave in the next 2 days. The bad ones who destroyed your world are coming here. The humans are going to protect us, but it might be scary for a while. A tiny Zephyrian named Crystal, barely the equivalent of a human 5-year-old, raised her translucent hand. Will the humans die protecting us? Webb felt his throat tighten. Some of them might. But they chose to stay because they care about you. They want you to be safe. Crystal's skin shifted to a deep blue, the color of sadness in Zephyrian culture. We don't want the humans to die. They teach us funny songs and show us pictures of their home world. Lyric spoke up, her voice carrying a maturity beyond her apparent years. Dr. Webb, in our culture, when someone chooses to die for family, the family must honor the choice by living fully. If the humans sacrifice themselves for us, we must make their sacrifice meaningful. Webb nodded, struck once again by the wisdom these young beings possessed. That's exactly right, Lyric. And that's why we're going to win. Because we have too much to lose. In the command center, Sarah reviewed intelligence reports with her senior staff. The latest data from long-range sensors painted a grim picture. 3 Kethvar destroyers and a command cruiser, Lieutenant Torres reported. Standard scouting formation, but heavily armed. Estimated combined firepower is 15 times our maximum defensive capability. What about their shields? Rodriguez asked. Torres pulled up detailed schematics. Adaptive plasma barriers. They can absorb and redirect most energy weapons. Conventional Federation tactics would be completely ineffective. Sarah studied the enemy ship configurations. What about our modified fusion discharge? Would their shields be effective against that level of energy output? Patel looked up from his engineering calculations. Unknown, Commander. The energy level we're planning to generate is beyond anything in their tactical databases. Their shields might hold, or they might overload catastrophically. There's no way to predict. Then, we make our own luck, Sarah decided. How long until they arrive? 18 hours, Commander. Sarah felt the weight of command settling heavier on her shoulders. 18 hours to complete their weapons modifications and prepare for a battle that would likely end in their deaths. But, around the command center, she saw no fear on the faces of her crew, only determination. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of activity. Engineering teams worked in shifts around the clock, their progress monitored by every person on the station. The fusion reactor modifications were proceeding ahead of schedule, but complications were mounting. "Commander, we've got a problem," Patel called over the communication system. "The power couplings for Reactor 5 are showing stress fractures. If they fail during the discharge sequence, we could lose 40% of our total output." Sarah was in the medical bay, helping to move Zephyri and children to the shielded lower levels. She paused in her work, considering their options. "Can you fabricate replacement couplings?" "Not with our current equipment." "But..." Patel hesitated. "The Zephyrians have some unusual materials science knowledge. Their ship hulls were made from crystalline matrices that conducted energy more efficiently than our best alloys." Sarah looked at Elder Threneth, who had been quietly observing the evacuation procedures. "Can your people help us?" The elderly Zephyrian's skin shifted through thoughtful silver patterns. "Our younglings study crystal growth as part of their education. Given the proper raw materials, they could grow replacement components that would be stronger than your original designs." Within hours, a small group of Zephyrian children were working alongside human engineers in a scene that would have been impossible to imagine just days before. The young aliens sang as they worked, their harmonic voices helping to guide the crystal growth process with precision that amazed the human technicians. Lyric worked directly with Patel, her slender crystalline fingers shaping energy conduits with an artist's precision. "In our old world," she explained through the translation matrix, "we grew our cities from living crystal. Each building was a living thing that could adapt and strengthen itself." "Incredible," Patel murmured, watching as the replacement couplings took shape under Lyric's guidance. "These materials are at least 30% more efficient than anything we could manufacture." As the engineering work continued, Dr. Webb made a discovery that changed their tactical situation dramatically. He burst into the command center, his face flushed with excitement. "Commander, I've been analyzing the Zephyrian psychic abilities. They're not just empathic bonds between family members. Their children can actually share sensory information across distances." Sarah looked up from the tactical displays. "What does that mean for our situation?" "It means we can have perfect coordination during the battle. The Zephyrian children can serve as a living communication network, sharing information instantly between different sections of the station. No communication delays, no signal interference." Security Chief Rodriguez leaned forward. "You're saying they can give us tactical awareness that the Kefar won't expect?" "Exactly. Their scouting fleets rely on jamming enemy communications. But psychic links can't be jammed." Sarah felt a surge of hope. "Elder Threneth, would your children be willing to help us in this way?" The old Zephyrian's skin cycled through proud gold patterns. "Commander Chen, our young ones have been asking how they can contribute to the battle. This would give them a way to fight alongside their new human family." The tactical advantages were significant. With psychic coordination, the human defenders could respond to threats with unprecedented speed and precision. But it would also put the Zephyrian children at greater risk, linking them directly to the battle's outcome. "There is one more thing," Elder Threneth continued. "If our children are sharing the psychic load of coordination, they will also share the emotional impact of the battle. They will feel every injury, every death among the defenders." Sarah closed her eyes, weighing the decision. Greater tactical capability against greater psychological trauma for children who had already suffered too much. It's their choice, she decided. "We'll explain the risks and let them decide." When the situation was explained to the young Zephyrians, their response was immediate and unanimous. They would serve as the communication network for the defense of their new home. With 6 hours remaining until the Kefar fleet arrived, the final preparations began. The fusion weapon was complete, its power couplings strengthened beyond original specifications by Zephyrian crystal technology. The children had been moved to the shielded lower levels, where they established their psychic network with the ease of young minds adapting to new challenges. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars that would soon bring death to her station. Around her, 119 human beings prepared to face impossible odds for the sake of 47 alien refugees they had known for less than a year. Commander, Dr. Webb joined her at the window. I wanted to thank you for making the choice to stay. Sarah shook her head. We all made that choice, Marcus. And we're going to see it through. The Zephyrians have a saying, Webb continued. Translated roughly, it means true family is not born, but chosen in moments of darkness. I think we understand that now. Through the observation window, Sarah could see the first faint lights of approaching ships on the long-range sensors. The Kethvar fleet was ahead of schedule. All stations, battle alert, she announced over the ship-wide communication system. This is not a drill. Enemy contact in 4 hours and 37 minutes. Throughout the station, humans and Zephyrians took their positions for a battle that would determine not just their survival, but their very definition of what it meant to be family in the vast darkness of space. In the lower levels, Lyric held hands with Crystal and the other young Zephyrians, their combined psychic awareness spreading throughout the station like a protective net. Above them, human defenders checked their weapons and made peace with their possible deaths. The predators were coming. But they would find more than helpless prey waiting for them. The Kethvar fleet dropped out of hyperspace like harbingers of extinction, their black hulls absorbing light and hope in equal measure. From the command center of Kepler 442, Commander Sarah Chen watched the tactical display as 4 predatory shapes arranged themselves in perfect hunting formation. Range, 2 million kilometers and, closing, Lieutenant Torres reported, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. They're maintaining standard approach velocity. No indication they know about our modifications. Through the psychic network, Sarah could feel the Zephyrian children's awareness spreading like invisible tendrils throughout the station. Their young minds processed incoming data with startling clarity, providing detail that conventional sensors could never match. Lyric's voice echoed through the translation matrix from her position in the shielded lower levels. The lead ship carries one who commands. His thoughts are cold like the space between stars. The others follow but do not love him. Elder Threneth, monitoring the children's psychic readings, added his interpretation. In our culture, we recognize such beings. They rule through fear rather than respect. It makes them strong, but also predictable. Sarah nodded, filing away this information. Every advantage would count in the coming battle. Chief Patel, status on our primary weapon? Fusion discharge array charged to 97%, came the response from engineering. Crystal-enhanced power couplings are performing beyond expectations. We could theoretically push output to 115% of design specifications. Negative, Sarah replied immediately. We stick to tested parameters. We'll only get one shot at this. On the main tactical display, the enemy formation began to shift. The 3 destroyer-class vessels spread out in a wide arc while the larger command cruiser maintained its position at the rear. It was a classic Kethvar intimidation pattern, designed to demonstrate overwhelming force before demanding surrender. Incoming transmission, Torres announced. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a nightmare from humanity's darkest fears. The Kethvar commander stood nearly 3 meters tall, his scaled hide a mottled green-black that seemed to absorb light. Multiple rows of razor-sharp teeth filled the elongated jaw, while pale yellow eyes regarded the camera with the cold calculation of a predator sizing up prey. When he spoke, his words were translated by the ship's computer into perfectly articulated English, which somehow made them more terrifying. Humans of the research station designated Kepler 442. I am War Leader Vrak of the Hegemony Advance Fleet. You harbor Zephyrian refugees who escaped our rightful conquest of their system. Surrender these criminals immediately, along with any data regarding their species and homeworld locations. Comply, and your deaths will be swift. The transmission paused, allowing the full weight of the threat to settle over the station's defenders. Sarah could feel the collective tension of her crew through the psychic network, but also their unwavering resolve. If you refuse our generous offer, Vrak continued, his lipless mouth stretching into what might have been a smile, we will take the refugees anyway, after we have made examples of every human on this pathetic station. Your Federation will learn the cost of harboring our prey. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in heavy silence. Sarah looked around at her senior staff, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. Lieutenant Torres, open a channel. The main screen activated, and Sarah stepped forward to address their would-be executioners. War Leader Vrak, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earth Federation. I have a counter-proposal for you. She could see the Kethvar's surprise at her calm demeanor. Clearly, he had expected either immediate surrender or desperate pleas for mercy. You can turn your fleet around and leave this system immediately. The beings you call refugees are under our protection, and they will remain so. This is your only warning. The alien commander's yellow eyes narrowed, and a deep rumbling sound emerged from his throat. The translation matrix identified it as laughter. Human, you command a research station with minimal defensive capabilities. My fleet could reduce your pathetic facility to component atoms in less than 20 standard time units. What possible threat could you pose to the might of the hegemony? Sarah smiled, an expression that carried no warmth but held infinite determination. You're about to find out. She cut the transmission before Vrakth could respond. Around the command center, her crew took their final positions as the enemy fleet resumed its advance. All stations, final battle stations, Sarah announced. Weapons free in 3 minutes. In the engineering section, Chief Patel watched power readings climb steadily toward maximum output. The fusion reactors hummed with barely contained energy, their crystal-enhanced systems performing flawlessly. Beside him, a team of Zephyrian children monitored the energy flow with their natural sensitivity to electromagnetic fields. The crystals sing when power flows through them, one young Zephyrian explained through the translation matrix. When they reach the perfect note, the weapon will be ready. Patel nodded, amazed at the intuitive understanding these children possessed. Human instruments showed the system at 98% charge, but the Zephyrian sensitivity to energy harmonics provided more precise feedback than any mechanical sensor. In the medical bay, Dr. Reyes prepared for casualties while working alongside Zephyrian healers. The alien medical knowledge had proven surprisingly compatible with human physiology, offering new treatment options they had never considered. Your species heals similarly to ours, explained a Zephyrian healer named Harmony. Flesh and crystal both require proper energy flow to repair damage. We can share healing techniques that your medicine has not yet discovered. Dr. Reyes felt a surge of hope amid the despair. Even if they somehow survived this battle, the medical knowledge exchange could benefit both species for generations. Throughout the station, similar scenes of cooperation and preparation unfolded. Humans and Zephyrians worked together with the natural ease of a family preparing to defend their home. Enemy fleet at 500,000 kilometers, Torres reported. They're charging weapons. Through the psychic network, the Zephyrian children provided detailed intelligence about the approaching ships. Their enhanced perception could detect energy patterns and crew movements that conventional sensors missed entirely. Crystal, the youngest of the refugees, spoke through the translation matrix with the clear voice of childhood innocence. The big ship has 200 bad ones inside. The smaller ships have 50 each. They are excited because they think this will be easy. Sarah filed away this information. 350 HFY warriors against 119 human defenders and 47 Zephyrian refugees. The odds were impossible by conventional standards, but conventional standards had never accounted for what desperation and love could accomplish. Fusion discharge array at 100%, Patel reported. We have a clean firing solution on the enemy formation. Sarah hesitated for a moment, knowing that the next few seconds would determine the fate of everyone under her command. Around the command center, her crew waited for the order that would either save their adopted family or ensure their mutual destruction. Wait for my command, she said quietly. Let them close to 200,000 kilometers. We need to ensure maximum effect. The HFY fleet continued its approach, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Through long-range scanners, Sarah could see their weapons charging to full power. Soon they would begin the systematic destruction of everything she had sworn to protect. 150,000 kilometers, Torres announced. In the lower levels, the Zephyrian children maintained their psychic network with perfect coordination. Their combined awareness created a tactical picture more detailed than anything human technology could provide. Through their shared consciousness, every defender on the station could see the battle from multiple perspectives simultaneously. They prepare to fire on the upper docking bays, Lyric reported. The commander wants to cripple our evacuation capabilities first, then destroy us slowly. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. The psychological warfare was exactly what Elder Threneth had predicted. The HFY wanted to maximize suffering and despair before delivering the final blow. 50,000 kilometers, Torres called out. The enemy formation spread wider, positioning themselves to attack from multiple angles simultaneously. It was a textbook assault pattern designed to overwhelm point defenses through superior positioning and firepower. But the HFY had never faced a weapon system like the one Chief Patel had constructed. The crystal-enhanced fusion discharge array was designed to deliver the equivalent of a stellar flare in a concentrated beam. At close range, it would either vaporize the enemy fleet or overload their adaptive shields so catastrophically that the backlash would destroy them. 20,000 kilometers, Torres announced. They're targeting our reactor housing. Perfect. The closer range would maximize the fusion array's effectiveness, and the HFY targeting priorities revealed their tactical blind spots. They saw the reactor as a vulnerability to exploit, not recognizing it as the weapon that would seal their fate. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every life on the station settling on her shoulders. Human and Zephyrian, adult and child, all depending on the next few seconds. All stations, prepare for fusion discharge, she commanded. Chief Patel, fire on my mark. The HFY fleet opened fire first, their plasma cannons sending streams of destruction toward the research station. Point defense systems activated automatically, intercepting some of the incoming fire but allowing several hits to penetrate the outer hull. Alarms blared throughout the station as damage reports flooded in. Hull War leader VracTH's command cruiser hung in space like a wounded predator, its massive disintegrator weapon glowing with malevolent energy. The alien commander stood on his bridge, yellow eyes fixed on the research station that had dared to challenge the might of the hegemony. Charging sequence at 80%, his weapons officer reported in the harsh, guttural language of the HFY. Disintegrator will be ready to fire in 90 time units. VracTH's scaled lips pulled back in a snarl of satisfaction. The humans had surprised him with their fusion weapon, but now they would pay the ultimate price for their defiance. The disintegrator would tear their station apart molecule by molecule, leaving nothing but scattered atoms floating in the void. On Kepler 442, Commander Sarachan watched the enemy weapon's energy buildup with growing dread. The tactical display showed power levels that exceeded anything in Federation databases. When that weapon fired, their shields would last perhaps 3 seconds before complete structural collapse. Options, she asked her senior staff, though she already knew the answer. Chief Engineer Patel shook his head grimly. None, Commander. Our fusion array is completely burned out. Conventional weapons can't penetrate their remaining shields. We've got point defense systems and, prayer, nothing more. Security Chief Rodriguez leaned over his tactical console. We could try ramming them with one of the evacuation shuttles. Loaded with explosives and see if we can get through their defenses. Negative, Sarah replied immediately. We need those shuttles for emergency evacuation if the lower levels are breached. Through the psychic network, the Zephyrian children continued monitoring the enemy ship with their enhanced perception. Their young voices carried across the station's communication system, providing details that conventional sensors could never detect. The big weapon makes the bad ship hurt, reported a young Zephyrian named Echo, her crystalline form pulsing with concerned orange patterns. The ship shakes when the weapon takes power. The bad ones are afraid their ship will break. Elder Threneth, monitoring the children's psychic readings from the shielded areas, added his interpretation. The disintegrator weapon is drawing more power than their ship was designed to handle. They're risking catastrophic system failure to ensure our destruction. Sarah felt a spark of desperate hope. How much more power? Lyric's voice carried through the translation matrix with surprising precision. The weapon takes 7 parts of 10 from their ship's heart. When it fires, they will have little power left for anything else. Dr. Webb, who had been quietly analyzing the children's reports, suddenly straightened. Commander, I think I understand what they're telling us. The disintegrator requires such massive power that it leaves the ship vulnerable during the charging sequence. Vulnerable how? Sarah demanded. Their shields have to be weakened to redirect power to the weapon system. And, after they fire, they'll need several minutes to restore full power to other systems. Rodriguez looked up from his console. So we need to survive the first shot and, then, hit them during their recovery period. Exactly, Webb confirmed. But, surviving that first shot is the problem. Sarah stared at the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. The station's conventional shields couldn't withstand a disintegrator blast, but perhaps they didn't need to rely on conventional defenses. Chief Patel, is there any way to use our remaining power to reinforce the shields? Emergency overload, anything? Patel ran quick calculations on his console. I could dump our entire backup power grid into the shield matrix, but it would only boost our defensive capability by maybe 20%. Still nowhere near enough. Through the psychic network, Crystal's young voice carried a suggestion that changed everything. Why don't we ask the big rock to help us hide? Sarah frowned, not understanding. What does she mean? Elder Threneth's skin shifted through thoughtful silver patterns as he interpreted. The station is anchored to a large asteroid for mineral extraction. Crystal suggests using the asteroid as a physical barrier. The asteroid's too small, Rodriguez objected. It couldn't shield the entire station. But Dr. Webb was already pulling up geological surveys of their anchored position. Wait, look at this. The asteroid has a hollow core filled with crystalline formations. If we could detonate our remaining explosives inside that core. Sarah caught on immediately. We could fracture the asteroid and create a debris field between us and their weapon. Patel nodded enthusiastically. The debris wouldn't stop a disintegrator beam, but it might scatter it enough to reduce the damage to survivable levels. It was a desperate plan with minimal chances of success, but it was better than sitting helplessly while the enemy charged their ultimate weapon. How long to set the charges? Sarah asked. 20 minutes if we use the mining shuttles, Patel replied. But, Commander, whoever goes out there won't be able to get back before the asteroid explodes. It's a suicide mission. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Someone would have to sacrifice themselves to give the others even a slim chance of survival. I'll go, Rodriguez volunteered immediately. Security's responsibility is protecting the station. No, Patel countered. I know the asteroid structure better than anyone. I should be the one. Before the argument could continue, Lyric's voice cut through the discussion via the translation matrix. We will go. Sarah turned toward the communication pickup in confusion. Lyric, you're in the shielded areas. You can't, not the younglings, Elder Threneth interrupted, his ancient voice carrying newfound resolve. The adults. We Zephyrian survivors will take the mining shuttle and set the charges. It is our right to protect our adopted family. Elder Threneth, no, Sarah protested. We're supposed to be protecting you. Commander Chen, the old Zephyrian replied with quiet dignity, you have already protected us in the way that matters most. You showed us that there are beings in this universe who will stand against evil, even when it means their own destruction. Now we choose to stand with you. Through the psychic network, Sarah could feel the unanimous agreement among the adult Zephyrians. They had made their decision with the same certainty that the humans had shown when voting to defend the refugees. Besides, Elder Threneth continued, our crystalline physiology gives us advantages in space. We can survive longer in vacuum than humans, and our natural sensitivity to energy fields will help us place the charges with maximum effectiveness. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of command crushing down on her. She was asking aliens to die for humans, when the entire purpose of their stand had been to protect those same aliens from death. Commander, Lyric's voice carried through the translation matrix, in our culture, family protects family. You are our family now. Let us help. The tactical display showed the enemy disintegrator weapon approaching 70% charge. Time was running out, and conventional military doctrine was useless in a situation no strategist had ever imagined. Very well, Sarah decided. Elder Threneth, take 4 volunteers and the fastest mining shuttle. Plant the charges in the asteroid's core and get as far away as possible before detonation. Understood, Commander. We will not fail you. As the Zephyrian volunteers prepared for their mission, the remaining defenders made their own preparations for what might be their final battle. Dr. Reyes organized emergency medical stations throughout the shielded areas. Chief Patel worked to maximize power efficiency in their failing systems. Security teams prepared to repel boarders if the enemy somehow survived the coming exchange. In the lower levels, the Zephyrian children maintained their psychic network with remarkable calm. Their crystalline skin shifted through patterns of love and determination as they shared strength with their adult relatives preparing to sacrifice themselves. The bad ship is at 8 parts of 10, Echo reported with clinical precision. The ship shakes more now. Some of the bad ones are scared. War leader Vrakth was indeed experiencing doubt for the first time in his military career. His ship groaned under the massive power requirements of the disintegrator weapon, and several secondary systems had already failed from the strain. But his pride demanded completion of the attack, regardless of the cost to his vessel. Charging sequence at 85%, his weapons officer reported nervously. Hull stress is approaching critical levels. Continue charging, Vrakth snarled. I will see that station reduced to atoms before I consider retreat. The Zephyrian shuttle launched from Kepler 442's docking bay, moving with desperate speed toward the asteroid's surface. Elder Threneth and his volunteers worked with practiced efficiency, their crystalline forms perfectly suited for the hazardous environment of space mining operations. Charges placed at primary stress points, Threneth reported through the shuttle's communication system. Detonation will create maximum fragmentation with current energy distribution. How long until you can reach safe distance? Sarah asked. We cannot, Threneth replied simply. The asteroid will fragment in all directions. There is no safe distance for a vessel this size. Sarah felt her heart breaking. These beings who had already lost everything were now sacrificing their lives for the slim chance that their children might survive. Elder Threneth. Commander Chen, the old alien interrupted, it has been an honor to serve alongside humans. Your species gives us hope that goodness can exist even in a universe of predators. Care for our young ones. Teach them that some things are worth dying for. The communication link went silent as the Zephyrian volunteers armed their explosive charges. On the tactical display, Sarah watched the small shuttle accelerate away from the asteroid, though not nearly fast enough to escape the coming detonation. Enemy weapon at 95% charge, Torres reported. Disintegrator will fire in 60 seconds. Sarah activated the station-wide communication system. All personnel, brace for impact. Emergency protocols are now in effect. Through the psychic network, the Zephyrian children shared their final farewells with the adults who had chosen to die for them. Their young voices carried across the station in harmonies of love and loss, creating a song that would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. Asteroid charges armed and ready, came Patel's voice from engineering. Detonating in 3, 2, 1. The asteroid exploded in a brilliant cascade of rock and crystal, creating a massive debris field between Kepler 442 and the approaching Kethvar ship. Fragments of every size tumbled through space, some as small as pebbles, others as large as buildings. Enemy weapon at 100%, Torres announced. They're firing. The disintegrator beam lanced through space, its coherent energy designed to unmake matter at the molecular level. But, as it struck the debris field, the beam scattered and diffused, its perfect focus broken by thousands of impacts with tumbling rock and crystal. What reached Kepler 442 was still devastating, but no longer instantly lethal. The station's shields flared and failed under the dispersed assault, and hull breaches opened in dozens of locations. But the primary structure held, and the reactor core remained intact. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows throughout the station as damage reports flooded in. The attack had caused massive destruction, but they were still alive. Status report, Sarah called out, her ears ringing from the concussive blast. Hull breaches on 15 levels, Patel reported. Life support is failing in sections 4 through 7. But we're still here, Commander. Through the psychic network, Crystal's young voice carried across the station with heartbreaking clarity. The bad ship is hurt now too. Its big weapon made it sick inside. On the tactical display, Sarah could see that the Zephyrian children were right. The Kethvar command cruiser was drifting, its power levels fluctuating wildly after the massive energy discharge. The disintegrator weapon had drained their systems beyond safe limits. War leader Vrakth stood on his damaged bridge, staring in disbelief at a research station that should have been reduced to component atoms. His perfect weapon had failed, and now his ship was vulnerable to counterattack. Restore power to shields and engines, he commanded his crew. Emergency protocols, maximum speed. But the damage was already done. The disintegrator's power requirements had pushed his ship beyond its limits, and critical systems were failing throughout the vessel. Commander Sarah Chen looked around her damaged command center at the faces of her surviving crew. They had paid a terrible price for their survival, but Elder Threneth's sacrifice had given them something precious, time. Chief Rodriguez, she commanded, her voice carrying new determination. Target all remaining weapons on that ship. We may only get one chance at this. The final phase of the Battle of Kepler 442 was about to begin, and, this time the Predators would learn what it meant to be prey. War leader Vraktich's command cruiser drifted helplessly in space, its massive bulk betraying none of the chaos erupting within its armored hull. Emergency lights cast crimson shadows across the bridge as damage reports flooded in from every section of the vessel. Power core operating at 37%, his engineering officer reported, fear creeping into his voice. Shield generators are offline. Weapons systems are completely drained. Estimated time to restore minimum combat capability, 14 time units. Vraktich's yellow eyes narrowed as he stared at the research station that had somehow survived his ultimate weapon. The human's pathetic facility hung in space like a wounded animal, hull breaches venting atmosphere into the void, but still defiantly intact. How is this possible? He hissed. The disintegrators should have reduced them to scattered molecules. His tactical officer studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. War leader, they used the asteroid as a dispersal field. The debris scattered our beam focus by 68%. It was ingenious. Vraktiech struck the officer across the face with a scaled backhand, sending him sprawling. Ingenious? They are primitive mammals. This is impossible. But, even as rage consumed him, the war leader knew his tactical situation had become desperate. His ship was vulnerable, his crew was demoralized, and the humans had already proven they possessed weapons technology that challenged every assumption about their capabilities. On Kepler 442, Commander Sarah Chen surveyed the damage to her station with grim determination. The Zephyrian sacrifice had saved them from instant annihilation, but they were still badly hurt. Hull breaches on 15 levels, life support failing in multiple sections, and power fluctuations throughout the primary grid. Casualty report, she requested, dreading the answer. Dr. Rhea's voice crackled through the damaged communication system. 17 injured, 3 critical. No fatalities among station personnel, but... She paused, her voice heavy with grief. We lost Elder Threneth and the 4 Zephyrian volunteers. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of those deaths settle on her conscience. 5 beings who had already lost their homeworld had given their lives to save humans they had known for less than a year. Through the psychic network, the Zephyrian children's voices carried across the station in a harmony of mourning and resolve. Their song spoke of loss and love, of sacrifice and determination, creating a melody that somehow strengthened the spirits of every human defender. The bad ship is broken inside, Lyric reported through the translation matrix, her young voice steady despite her grief. Its heartfire burns low. It cannot fight properly for many breaths. Security Chief Rodriguez looked up from his tactical console, his face grim but hopeful. Commander, all our remaining weapons are operational. Point defense systems, plasma cannons, even the mining charges we use for asteroid operations. If we're ever going to hurt that ship, now's our chance. Sarah studied the tactical display, calculating angles and power levels with desperate precision. The Kefvar cruiser was vulnerable, but their window of opportunity was measured in minutes, not hours. Soon the alien ship would restore enough power to either resume the attack or retreat to summon reinforcements. Chief Patel, can you redirect power from non-essential systems to weapons? Already on it, Commander, came the reply from engineering. I'm pulling power from everything except life support and structural integrity. We'll have maximum weapons output for approximately 8 minutes before we start losing critical systems. Sarah nodded, understanding the implications. This would be their only chance to end the threat permanently. If they failed to destroy or disable the Kefvar ship in the next few minutes, they would be defenseless against whatever forces the enemy brought back. All weapons stations, prepare for concentrated bombardment, she commanded. Target their engine section and primary power core. We end this now. Throughout the station, human defenders took their positions at weapon controls with the steady determination of people who had already faced death and refused to yield. They had lost friends, watched their home burn, and witnessed the sacrifice of innocent beings who trusted them with their lives. Now it was time for justice. The first salvo erupted from Kepler 442's remaining weapons systems like the fury of God's given form. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and kinetic projectiles converged on the Kefvar cruiser's weakened hull with surgical precision guided by the psychic awareness of Zephyrian children. Direct hits on their engine housing, Rodriguez reported with satisfaction. Secondary explosions detected throughout their aft sections. Through the psychic network, Crystal provided real-time damage assessment with the clinical accuracy that only children seem to possess. The bad ship bleeds light from many holes. The bad ones inside are very scared now. War leader Vrakth felt his ship shudder under the human bombardment, each impact sending tremors through the deck plates beneath his feet. Systems that had survived centuries of conquest were failing one by one as the research station's desperate assault found weakness after weakness in his vessel's damaged defenses. "Return fire," he roared at his weapons officer. "Impossible, War Leader," came the terrified reply. "Weapons systems remain offline. Engineering estimates 12 more time units before minimal firing capability returns." Vrakth stared at the tactical display showing his mighty cruiser being methodically destroyed by what should have been helpless prey. For the first time in his military career, he faced the possibility of defeat at the hands of a supposedly inferior species. "All power to engines," he commanded. "We withdraw to summon the main fleet." But, even as his crew attempted to implement retreat protocols, another devastating salvo struck his ship. The humans were targeting his engines specifically, preventing any possibility of escape. On Kepler 442, Sarah watched with grim satisfaction as their weapons found their marks with devastating accuracy. The Zephyrian children's psychic guidance made their gunners more precise than any targeting computer, allowing them to exploit every vulnerability in the enemy vessel's damaged structure. "Enemy ship is attempting to retreat," Torres reported. "Their engine output is increasing." "Negative," Sarah replied coldly. "Target their drive section." Full bombardment. The next wave of weapons fire struck the Kethvar cruiser's engine housing with the accumulated fury of every human defender who had chosen to stand between evil and innocence. Explosions chained through the alien vessel's propulsion systems, leaving it completely dead in space. Through the psychic network, Echo's young voice carried urgent information. "The bad ship cannot move now. But, the main bad one is talking to other bad ships far away. He calls for help." Sarah felt ice forming in her stomach. Even if they destroyed this ship, Vrakth might have already summoned reinforcements. A full Kethvar battle fleet would reduce Kepler 442 to atoms within hours of arrival. "How long until potential reinforcement arrival?" she asked. Dr. Webb, monitoring the children's psychic reports, provided translation. "Based on Zephyrian perception of the communication, approximately 18 standard hours. Maybe less if they have ships in nearby systems. 18 hours. Enough time for a Federation rescue fleet to arrive, if Admiral Harrison had changed her mind about the evacuation orders." But, Sarah had no way of knowing whether help was coming or whether they would face the next battle alone. "Commander," Chief Patel's voice carried across the communication system, "I'm reading massive power fluctuations aboard the enemy ship. Their containment systems are failing." Through the psychic network, Lyric provided more detailed information about the enemy vessel's condition. "The bad ship's heartfire is breaking free from its cage. It will explode soon, like a star being born." Sarah realized with growing alarm that the Kethvar cruiser was experiencing a reactor containment failure. If those reactors went critical while the ship was this close to the station, the explosion would destroy both vessels. "All hands, prepare for emergency maneuvers," she commanded. "Chief Patel, maximum power to our remaining thrusters. Get us away from that ship." But, even as Kepler 442's damaged systems strained to move the massive research station away from the dying enemy vessel, Sarah knew they couldn't achieve sufficient distance in time. The station's thrusters were designed for station keeping, not emergency acceleration. They had survived the battle only to face destruction from the enemy's death throes. War leader Vrakth stood on his bridge as emergency alarms screamed throughout his ship. His engineering crew had abandoned their posts as reactor containment fields collapsed one by one. In minutes, perhaps seconds, his mighty cruiser would become a miniature supernova. For the first time in his life, the alien commander felt something approaching respect for an enemy. The humans had fought with a courage and ingenuity that transcended their technological limitations. They had turned a hopeless defensive action into victory through sheer determination and sacrifice. But they would die alongside him in the coming explosion, and the hegemony would eventually send fleets to finish what he had started. As Vrakth prepared for death, he failed to notice the new contacts appearing on his damaged sensors. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, but their energy signatures were wrong for Kethvar vessels. Admiral Patricia Harrison's voice crackled across every communication frequency as her battle group emerged from hyperspace jump. This is Admiral Harrison aboard the Federation battleship Endeavour. All Kethvar vessels in this system, you are ordered to surrender immediately or face destruction. Sarah felt her heart leap as she recognized the Admiral's voice. But her joy was tempered by the immediate crisis of the dying enemy ship. Admiral Harrison, this is Commander Chen. We have a critical situation. The Kethvar cruiser is experiencing reactor failure. Estimated detonation in 3 minutes. Understood, Commander. All ships, emergency tractor beam deployment. Pull that research station clear of the blast radius. Multiple Federation vessels focused their tractor beams on Kepler 442, their combined gravitational field slowly but steadily pulling the damaged station away from the doomed Kethvar cruiser. Sarah watched the range indicators climb with agonizing slowness as precious seconds ticked away. 2,000 kilometers and, increasing, Torres reported. But, I don't think it's enough. Through the psychic network, the Zephyrian children shared their perception of the failing enemy ship. Their young minds could sense the growing instability in its reactor core with precision that mechanical sensors couldn't match. The bad ship's heart will break in 40 breaths, Crystal reported with her characteristic directness. We need to be 3 times farther away. Admiral Harrison's voice cut through the mounting desperation. Commander Chen, prepare for emergency beam out. We're evacuating all personnel immediately. Negative, Admiral, Sarah replied firmly. We have Zephyrian refugees in our lower levels. Their physiology requires specific atmospheric conditions. Standard transporters could kill them. Then, we modify our transporters, Harrison replied without hesitation. Dr. Reyes, transmit all medical data on Zephyrian physiology to our medical teams. We'll adapt. As Federation medical teams worked frantically to modify transporter systems for alien physiology, the dying Kethvar cruiser's reactor core finally reached critical mass. The explosion that followed was visible from 3 star systems away, a brief burst of stellar fire that painted the void in brilliant white light. The shockwave struck Kepler 442 12 seconds later, even at their improved distance. The research station's remaining shields flared and died under the assault, while hull breaches opened in dozens of new locations. But the primary structure held, and, most importantly, the shielded areas where the Zephyrian children waited remained intact. When the light faded and the sensors cleared, Sarah found herself looking at a Federation battle group that had arrived just in time to witness their impossible victory. Admiral Harrison's face appeared on the main screen, her expression mixing relief with amazement. Commander Chen, report your status. Station heavily damaged but intact, Sarah replied, hardly believing her own words. All personnel accounted for. Zephyrian refugees are safe and unharmed. Admiral Harrison shook her head in disbelief. Commander, according to our intelligence, you faced a full Kethvar scouting fleet with minimal defensive capabilities. How did you manage to survive, let alone achieve victory? Sarah looked around her damaged command center at the faces of her crew, then, down toward the lower levels where Zephyrian children maintained their psychic network with the dedication of young minds who had found their place in the universe. We had help, Admiral. And, we had something the Kethvar didn't understand. Which was? Sarah smiled, thinking of Elder Threnith's sacrifice, of the vote to stay and fight, of young voices singing songs of courage in the darkness. Family, Admiral. We had family. 6 months later, Kepler 442 had been rebuilt and expanded, transformed from a simple research station into a symbol of interspecies cooperation. The Zephyrian refugees had been granted full Federation citizenship, but they chose to remain at the station that had become their home. In the memorial garden constructed from fragments of the asteroid that had saved them, a crystal monument bore the names of Elder Threnith and his 4 volunteers. Zephyrian children tended glowing flowers around the memorial while human children played alongside them, their laughter echoing through corridors once filled with the sounds of war. Commander Sarah Chen stood in her rebuilt command center, reading reports of similar cooperative colonies being established throughout Federation space. The Battle of Kepler 442 had inspired other worlds to open their doors to refugees, creating a network of mutual support that strengthened both human and alien communities. Dr. Webb approached her with a datapad containing the latest research findings. Commander, you'll want to see this. Our joint research with Zephyrian scientists has led to breakthroughs in crystal technology, psychic communication networks, and medical applications. The knowledge exchange is benefiting both species enormously. Sarah nodded, but her attention was drawn to the observation deck where Lyric worked with a group of human engineers on a new project. The young Zephyrian had become fascinated with human technology, while the humans learned from her intuitive understanding of energy flow and crystalline structures. "Any word on war leader Vrakth's replacement?" Sarah asked. Webb shook his head. The Kethvar hegemony has pulled back from this sector entirely. Apparently, word of their defeat here has caused significant political upheaval in their government. Some sources suggest they're reconsidering their expansion policies. Sarah smiled at this news. Perhaps their stand had accomplished more than just saving one group of refugees. Perhaps they had shown the galaxy that predators could be stopped, that courage and determination could overcome superior firepower when guided by love and sacrifice. Through the rebuilt communication system, Crystal's young voice carried across the station in the daily song that had become their tradition. Other children, both Zephyrian and human, joined in the melody that spoke of loss and hope, of family bonds that transcended species and distance. As Sarah listened to their voices, she thought of the choice her crew had made that day when death approached their station. They had chosen to stand between darkness and innocence, to become something greater than themselves in defense of those who could not defend themselves. The predatory group had closed ranks, seeking easy prey. Instead, they had found a human who positioned himself before the young and roared in defiance, backed by a crew that understood what it truly meant to be family. And, in that defiance, in that roar of protection and love, they had found something stronger than any weapon the galaxy could devise, the unbreakable bonds that form when good people choose to stand together against the darkness. The Battle of Kepler 442 was over. The war for the soul of the galaxy had just begun. But, with families like this one standing guard at the borders of civilization, Sarah Chen was confident about which side would ultimately prevail. In the memorial garden, flowers of crystal and carbon grew side by side, their roots intertwined in soil watered by sacrifice and tended by love. Above them, stars wheeled in their eternal dance, and, somewhere among them, other refugees looked toward the light and dared to hope for sanctuary. The story of Kepler 442 would be remembered for generations, passed down through both human and Zephyrian cultures as proof that when family stands together, no force in the universe can break them. And, in the end, that was the greatest victory of all.